Well, hello everybody, my name is Matt Klaskowski, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at how you can make your own Lightroom and Photoshop camera raw profiles or LUTs, lookup tables, whatever you want to call it. We're going to dive deep into how you can make your own. It's been a very popular question lately. There's not a lot of information, and the information that's out there on it is kind of complicated. So I want to hopefully break it down for you, give you some pretty easy, repeatable steps that you can follow if you want to make your own. Okay, a couple of things before we get started. Thing number one, this is a little bit on the advanced side. Okay, there's no way to do this without kind of talking some techie jargon of sorts. It's a little bit on the advanced side, so just want to warn you ahead of time if you're not even sure what I'm talking about. If this whole profile thing is brand new to you, go check out the link in the description. It's got a basic video where I talk about what profiles are. They were added to Lightroom and Photoshop back in early April of 2018. It's kind of a game changer in our editing, okay? Profiles / LUTs, lookup tables, these are the preset of the future. This is what we're gonna be using, so get on board now, figure out what they are. Even if you don't go this far to create your own, it's good to just learn a little bit more about them, okay? Thing number two, how we're gonna attack this. We're gonna do it all in the same video. It's gonna be a longer video, but just understand I'm gonna first show you how to make a LUT, a lookup table, because you can make profiles from sliders inside of Lightroom and everything. There's no reason to. I can't think of a really good reason to, I should say. I'm sure somebody will have a reason to do it, but it's you can create them from sliders. That, to me, that's kind of silly. If you're going to do this, you want access to the things that Lightroom and Photoshop don't have access to, and Lightroom and Camera Raw don't have access to. So you're really going to be creating these from a LUT or a lookup table, okay? Not sliders. It's not just a new way to create a preset. So we're going to talk about LUTs, and then I'll show you how to get them into Camera Raw and Lightroom. Okay, let's dive in here. We're going to open up Photoshop. We're going to start in Photoshop because I want to show you two ways to create a LUT file. Okay, you can use a color lookup table adjustment from the adjustments panel, which I've used for years. I love these things. There's some really nice ones inside of here. Crisp Warm has always been a favorite one of mine. I can always go down here and change blend modes. This is pretty cool because I can change the blend mode to color, which just keeps the color, gets rid of the luminance that this LUT happens to change. And then the nice part about it is when I save it as yet another LUT or lookup table, it'll have that blend mode in there. So right there, you've got this thing in Lightroom and Camera Raw that supports blend modes that you really could never get to. Okay, so that's kind of an upside of it. Another upside of a LUT or a lookup table, they made their way from the video world. I could do a half-hour video just on LUTs, but they made their way from the video world, and they were a way. It was almost like a preset for video footage. They work in a little bit of a different way from a preset because we can get access when creating a LUT, and you're going to see that in a second here. We can get access to things that we really can't get to in like HSL, hue saturation, luminance, some of your other adjustments, split toning, where we can map colors. We can map colors in a better way with LUTs. So if you're really trying you have a refined eye and you're really trying to do this in a different way, we get more power with a LUT than we can just with sliders inside of Lightroom and Photoshop and Camera Raw. Okay, so now that's one way to we've added a LUT here now, but I've changed it, right? I changed the blend mode and all that. Well, I can go up here to the File menu, go down to Export, and I can save this as a color lookup table. And by the way, I'm assuming all of the latest versions of Lightroom and Camera Raw. I don't know how far this goes back in Photoshop. I do know in Lightroom that it only goes back to early April 2018. So just assuming the latest versions. You could give yourself a just quick descriptive name here, give a copyright, the most important things. So trying to call out, Adobe's got a software development kit that's many pages long. I'm trying to call out the important stuff for you. Most important point, grid points has to be set to 32, and it's got to be a cube format. Okay, these 3D LUTs have different formats to them. Cube is the format that you'll need if you want this to work inside of Lightroom and Photoshop. All right, then you go over here, you click OK, and let's go onto my desktop. Let's go in here, and I already created one. I'm going to overwrite it just so we can We can continue on here. So there, I've created a LUT file. If I go and look inside of that folder on my desktop, you will see there's the file that we just created, okay? So that's the cube file. Now, you can create LUT files from other adjustment layers, okay? Not all of them, but things like gradient map, channel mixer, some two really popular ones. You can create LUT files from there. So let's delete this one. And by the way, I deleted it. You can stack them on top of each other and create your own little mayhem chaos of multiple adjustment layers into one LUT file. So in fact, I'll do just that. Let's leave it here. Let's go up here to adjustments. I'm gonna add the gradient map one. Again, not all of them work. Gradient map is one of the more popular ones. We go to a black and white, creates a really nice black and white. It's been a popular black and white conversion for a while now. You can click on the gradient and you can add stops just by clicking. They can have color to them. They can not have color to them. They can be in different luminance and whatnot, and you'll see how it affects the bias of how your black and white is gonna look. And then you can go and load some of the presets inside here, which I would suggest photographic toning is a good one. That's the one that I have open here. There's a lot of nice things inside of here, guys. As you click through, you can get a lot of different and cool types of looks as you go on, click through here, okay? So let's settle on that one. So now I've got two adjustment layers over here. One's a gradient map. One is actually a color lookup table adjustment layer. Come up here to the file menu and go down here to export. I would export this the same exact way that I did before. Main things, whatever you want to name it, it's got to be 32, got to be a cube file, okay? Export that as a LUT. Now you're good to go. Now we can use it somewhere else. That's how I create my LUTs inside of Photoshop. Now, I promised in the beginning I'm kind of gonna peel back everything for better or for worse. If you want to follow and dissect how I created my own LUTs, you're welcome to do that. I did create some inside of Photoshop. Between the gradient map and the channel mixer panel, you can do some pretty cool things. Most of my LUTs are created in a different way because for me personally, if I'm in Lightroom or Camera Raw, most of my favorite photos are going to see Photoshop anyway. So even if it's just for a second to do content aware or whatever, my workflow is Lightroom, Photoshop, then back to Lightroom. So since everything's going to be in Photoshop, I generally don't make a lot of LUTs or profiles from stuff that I can just do inside of Photoshop. If you're the kind that's never going to leave Lightroom, you don't want to ever leave Lightroom, by all means, you can make them to your heart's content and you can stay in Lightroom longer. But for me, most of my stuff ends up in Photoshop anyway. So the way that I create most of my LUTs is with a program called 3D Lut Creator, okay? The idea behind this program, this is like the uber mega program to create LUTs from. It took me about 6 months to learn. I literally spent months trying to figure this thing out, but I can work on channels. I can work through the volume view of different colors. The LAB color mode I can have access to. I actually use a different grid point option here. This option inside here gives me option to work with the luminance of the different color values. We can work with different blend modes inside of here. I can blend them based on luminance. I can also blend them based on different color mappings that we have here. So there's a lot you can do with this program. It would literally take me hours to explain everything inside of this program, but I wanted to show you this is how I create most of my LUTs, because I can get a very good and natural color mapping from one color to another in ways that I can't inside of Photoshop and Lightroom. So that's how I basically create them all. You would save it, come up here to its file menu, and you can export it as a 3D LUT file. Main things to remember, 32 as the size, cube as the format. Same thing goes inside of here as it did in Photoshop. That's what Lightroom and Photoshop need for this. This program is about 199 bucks. That's why I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. Not many people have it. They have lesser versions. If you're gonna get into this and you want it to be able to work with Lightroom and Photoshop, you really need the Pro version, which is 199 bucks, okay? That is how I create my LUTs. My profiles, the stuff that if you've watched any of the ones that I use or whatnot, that's how I create them to get them to be able to be used inside of Photoshop and Lightroom. Now let's talk about how to get these things in? Wherever you created them, how do you get them into Photoshop and Lightroom? Before I do that, this seems like a perfectly natural time to let you know that I have my own profile/LUT packages. So if you go to mattkay.com/profiles, there's number one, a video there that shows you what all this stuff is about. But I have a free sample package, and then I also have a whole big bundle. It's got some landscape ones, it's got some black and white ones, it's got 4 seasons, and then it's got some portrait and wedding ones, which by all means, none of them are restricted to one or the other. I get some of my best results when I use a portrait one on a landscape. So you get lots of creative possibilities. So it's on a big sale this week. So if you want to go check that out, you can find out more about it. All right, let's hop over to Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these, and let's take our photo here. We're going to go up here and open up Camera Raw. I can go to the filter menu and do it through the filter menu, or I can open up a raw file. It's one way or another, you have to get into Camera Raw. I know it's weird because we want them for Lightroom, but it has to go through Camera Raw. Lightroom doesn't have the entryway into being able to create these things. So just bear with me. You will be able to use this inside of Lightroom in just a moment. All right, we're in the basic panel. You will see our little profile section over here. If I click on the little grid icon over here, I can see my profile browser and everything that's located inside of here. I don't have my profile LUT that I created before in here though, so let's do that. Let's close this. Let's go to the presets panel right up here at the top. And here's the secret handshake number 2. Okay, if you Option or Alt click on that new preset icon, you get a whole different dialog box. You get a whole different dialog box that gives you the window into being able to load these LUTs inside of here. So the first thing would be give yourself a name. I'll just call it Crisp Warm Test because I think I called one Crisp Warm before. The set, think of the set as the folder name, okay? If it's landscapes, if it's portraits, if it's black and white, whatever, that would be the set name. So think of that as your set name. I'll click on New Set, and I'm just gonna call this Matt's Video Test and click OK here. That way it'll be separated. You can use, if you had sliders changed before you did this, you can save them as a profile. The problem is they get applied as a profile later on when you use that. The sliders won't ever move. You'll never be able to go back and change it and never be able to tweak it. If that's what you want, go for it. It's generally not what most people want. If we're gonna use that, just do a preset, right? Just make a preset and then you can go change the sliders if you want to. You don't get any better or worse results from doing it this way. So I would say just create a preset. So in most cases, you're gonna forget about this section up here. Tone map strength, when we save this as a profile, we're gonna have of course, our basic panel will have the shadows and the highlight slider inside of it. The tone map strength is how much leeway those sliders are gonna have. The normal is what you're used to. It's what I'm used to. It's what we see every day with the shadows and highlight slider. If you want to crank it up, you can crank it up. It gets pretty unexpected. The results are uncontrollable, and they'll get out of hand pretty much. So I wouldn't suggest it, but hey, have at it if you want to give it a try. Look table. This is a whole nother area. This lets you create a color lookup table based on basically a CSV, a comma separated value file. It's just a bunch of numbers. Not really very applicable for what we're going to use here. There's not really many ways to create them. But if you're an expert and you can open up an Excel spreadsheet and start typing in numbers, and you can make a lookup table yourself from scratch if you'd like to. We're going to skip by this one and go to the one that most people are going to use, and that is the bottom section. So we choose color lookup table. Okay, we created one of those before, so I'm going to click that checkbox. You're going to go and navigate to where you stored that file before. Doesn't matter, doesn't need to be any place special. Just go navigate to that cube file you saved. Hit load. And then we're going to have a couple of settings that we have down here. Most important things, you're going to choose Adobe RGB as your color space. Gamut, just leave that to clip. Samples, leave that to 32. Min, amount, and max. This is going to be your amount slider. So your amount slider will go from 0 to 200, okay? What you're going to want to do, I would suggest leave your minimum at 0. leave your amount at 100. And what happens is when you apply this profile, that amount's going to be centered at 100. That's 100% of the profile. If you want to let people go above that, or you want to go above that, there's no way you'll know what it's going to look like, but you can set the max amount to something higher if you want to. I usually just set it to like 125%. All right, I'll go down here and set it to 125. I'll let you go a little bit above what the intended value was for this, but I'm not going to let you crank it up to 200 because it's going to get pretty unpredictable at that point. But that deals with the amount slider. Again, the minimum is what's going to happen all the way to the left, maximum's all the way to the right. Amount is the setting directly in the middle. All right, once we've done all that, you're going to click OK. Once you click OK, you can now go back to your basic panel. You can go over here to Profile and click on the Profile browser. Scroll all the way down here to the bottom and look at that. There is Matt's video test. There's the profile. I can now click on it. I can see the amount slider is loaded for this one. I can bring it down to 0, which is nothing. I can bring it to 100, which is 100% of the effect I intended. And if I crank it up to 200, that's 125% of the effect. Again, it gets unpredictable, so I don't suggest cranking that up too much. All right, now we'll hop over here to Lightroom, which I don't have Lightroom open, and that's a good thing. You're not going to see them in Lightroom until you restart. So you have to restart Lightroom. So it's a good thing I had it closed out that when you restart Lightroom after this, you saw them immediately in Camera Raw. It doesn't happen inside of Lightroom. You've got to restart it. We come over here to our basic panel profile section. Click on that. And if I scroll down there to the bottom, you will see Matt's video test listed right there. And that is the LUT/profile that we created earlier. So you'll see it shows up right here in Lightroom. Couple other things. So one more thing that's important about this, kind of the last secret handshake, if you will. And that is there's a little bit of rhyme or reason of what you can do inside of here. So the way that I'm going to show you this is actually get you to the point where you can change it. If you right click on here, you'll see a bunch of different options for the profile. If you right click on the name of the profile or the thumbnail. If you just go to rename, you get this basic rename dialog box. But if you option or alt click, which is the secret keyboard handshake for this one, to rename, it opens up the advanced dialog box. So in here, you can change the set. Remember, the set's basically the folder, a black and white folder, a landscape folder, a portrait folder. That's the set, okay? Then the cluster is essentially these little divider bars that you see inside of here. So Adobe clustered artistic, black and white, modern, and vintage together. I clustered my own personal ones together, and I did that by using the same cluster name. Even though they had different sets, even though the folders were different, I used the same cluster name of Matt K. And that way everything appears between those little bars there, and that's the cluster for this one. Short name is if you don't have a lot of screen real estate or if it's on a mobile device, because these will show up on Lightroom Mobile. Sort name, that is if they're all going to be sorted alphabetically. If you want to change that and you want something that has a Z as its first name, which not many presets probably will, but maybe it's got an S or something like that, or V for vignette. Again, I wouldn't do a vignette in a profile. You get the idea. They're sorted alphabetically. If you want to change that, you could just put a 1 for its sort name, and now that's going to pop up toward the top regardless of alphabetically whatever it's named inside of there. Description, copyright, contact information, model, from all models and formats, raw and non-raw images. You might notice that some of the Adobe profiles don't work on non-raw photos. So that's important here. I leave it set to raw and non-raw. Color and monochrome, I leave it set to, and then normal and HDR images, I also leave it set to both of those. If you merge together in HDR inside of Camera Raw or Lightroom, it becomes a different file type, but you can still apply your profiles to those. And then support the amount slider. So if you're gonna make them for somebody and you don't want to have an amount slider, you don't have to have it, just uncheck that little box and it's gone. All right, and let's go ahead and cancel out of there. And the last thing here, I'm just gonna show you, I wanna show you where they're stored. Easy way to find them, I just go to my Lightroom preferences. There's a path for this as well, but I go to my Lightroom preferences, I show the presets folder, and then instead of diving into that Lightroom presets folder, just go up to the camera raw folder instead, and then go into settings. So right here at the top, you will see that it saves everything as an XMP file. Your profiles and your presets are all now saved as XMP files. Important thing, the reason why I open this up is folders no longer matter, okay? Got to forget the notion of folders. I know they used to matter and where we put them. All of the information about what's important with a profile or a preset is now embedded inside of the file itself. So it tells it what folder to go into. So even though I have things ordered in certain folders here, I can pull them out and pull them in whatever folder I want. They're still gonna stay in the right place because all the information about where they should be is stored within the file itself. Okay? Guys, I hope that gives you kind of an overview. The Adobe SDK is kind of long to get through. This is the Cliff Notes as much as I could give them and make them Cliff Notes for it on how to go in here and create your own profiles for this stuff. As I mentioned before, check out mattk.com/profiles. I've got a free pack on there for you to try out if you want. And then I've got also a big bundle that's on sale for like 70% off. So if you want to find out more about that, you can go check out the profile bundle and see lots of before and after images as well as the video on there. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again real soon.